Here's a thought that I want you to consider. What if the topic and the whole concept of deafness and being deaf, what if that's a positive thing? What if it's a contribution to society, to humanity? What if it's something that is not a loss, it's not something that's void or lacking, it is actually a gain? Have you ever thought about it that way? You see, this is the topic of deaf gain. In essence, it's kind of the opposite of hearing loss. And that might be a bit weird for you, it's a hearing loss, but deaf gain sounds obviously more positive. But how can being deaf be more positive? How is that a gain? Well, this is what I want to talk about. What is deaf gain and why is it a big topic in the deaf community, and why it's something that we should all appreciate and just look at it from a different perspective. And I think it's something that not a lot of people really are aware about, especially if you're not someone who's considered to be deaf. But even if you are, then it might be something that you want to think about yourself. And maybe if you are struggling with it in certain ways, let's see what we can do to look at it in a more positive way. But the topic of deaf gain is huge. So let's get into this topic of what is deaf gain. Before you do, don't forget that you can be a patron of this channel. This is where you can support me, support the channel, and also support the topic of deaf awareness, being more vocal about it, and just sharing the content out there. Don't forget, you can check it out in the link, and you can be part of the community of patrons from just as little as $3 a month. And it's all available there in the link for you in the description. Don't forget to check it out. Right, deaf gain, what is it? See, the framework of deaf gain, it has been put together by scholars, PhD scholars of Gallaudet University, the world's first and only deaf college university in Washington DC, and it's put together by two scholars. One is called Ishdirkin Bauman and the other is Joseph Murray. And basically they have put together a journal entitled Reframing from Hearing Loss to Deaf Gain. And it's something that I think everyone should read themselves. It's not massively long and it's very easy to consume, and you'll get a much better perspective of what they talk about, the whole framework of deaf gain. I'll put that link in the description, you can check it out. But really the general essence is that it wants to reframe the concept of deaf, and it wants to look at it in a more positive way, because in essence, as I said earlier, it's the opposite of hearing loss. Now this is the thing, hearing loss implies something negative, but deaf gain implies obviously positive. But how can that be? How can it be a positive thing? Some people might be confused about that. That's the whole point of a journal. They want to challenge and counter that status quo of deaf being a negative thing, and they want to look at it in a more positive thing. And there might be a little thing that people say, oh, the benefit of it is, for example, you'll have a different perspective of the world, you'll have a different creative outlet, you'll have maybe better visual ability than people who are hearing. There are all these little things that people say that's the benefit that I get from it. But there is a bigger benefit in terms of having access to really important thing for many people in all spectrum of life. I'm talking about culture, community, history, language. These are some of the few things that people get to have access to if you are deaf. And deaf gain implies that you have access to the strong, deep, and really powerful meanings of each of these topics and more. And that's the general benefit of being part of a deaf community, is that you have access to many, many things that you wouldn't have otherwise have had access to if you were hearing. Albeit it might be possible, but it's quite difficult. And it's also very difficult to have access to it if you have been brought up mainstream, and it's difficult to access it. And then there are obviously underlying issues in terms of, should it be segregated, should it not? Should it be able to open it to everyone, should it not? That's a separate conversation. But what I want to focus on is the whole concept of deaf gain and how that can apply to everyone. And like I said, there is a huge one in terms of all these big things you get, the culture, the language, the community, and then there are all the little things as well. But the big thing as well is that whoever look at it as a positive thing and it's a benefit to them, they don't see it as a hearing loss. They don't like the term hearing loss, and especially hearing impaired, because that implies negative link attached to it. It's not a negative link, it's a positive thing. So it's not a loss of something, it's not a void, it's not lacking anything. You're getting something for it by being deaf. And that's the general idea of deaf gain. And this is the problem that what they mentioned in their journal about the reframing the aspect of deaf gain, and that the way we look at it, the general society perception is of a purely audiological view of deafness, which is, for example, disability, hearing loss, medical. But they don't really think about all the other things as well. And that's what the journal is trying to challenge. And that's what people are trying to be more vocal about. It's not a disability, it's not a medical thing. There are people who see it as a different way. They see it as part of who they are, their identity, their proud identity as well. The most common thing you see and hear about when a parent, new parent, they have their baby, newborn baby, and the doctor says, unfortunately, your baby is deaf, or your child has hearing loss, or all these things. And part of that journey, but everyone else, they talk about how, why is that a bad thing? The baby is only a few hours old and has failed something. There's something negative about that baby. People always say, unfortunately, and then negative thing about it. And the argument is that, why don't you not look at it in a different way? This happened, but the positive thing in gaining deafness is that you have these things instead. And then the parents will have exposure to different things, and their mind will be open and their perspective will be different. And that is the benefit of having a deaf baby. But the general perception is that it's unfortunate, it's negative, doom and gloom. That's what it is. It's just doom. And that's on the individual perspective, but even outside of that, let's think about it from the society perspective. People also talk about how deaf gain can benefit the society as a whole, and the journal has mentioned that as well. What would be beneficial for yourself to get an idea of it, to see more like an illustration or some kind of view of what it looks like for deaf people to talk about deaf gain, is there's a popular clip from a US series called Switch at Birth, and it's one of the first mainstream series where it had deaf and hard of hearing actors, and there were scenes where it was just only by sign language, in this case American Sign Language. And there's a particular scene where the teacher, who's played by Marlee Matlin, and she is teaching the students, and they're all deaf and they're all speaking in sign language, ASL. And she was talking about how, right, what is this thing about hearing loss? Is it a hearing loss? What about deaf gain? You know, if you were able to cure your deafness, if you woke up tomorrow hearing, would you take it? You know, what do you get from being deaf? All these things. And then the students start to open up about how they're tired of being seen as a negative thing, as a burden to society. But they also then talk about, look at the benefit that we have of being deaf, and we would not choose being hearing instead. Check it out. It's only like a 2-minute long video. I'll put the link again in the description, and you can get an idea of how they view deaf gain as well. It's a contribution for themselves and as a society as well. But on the topic of society, this is the thing. History suggests that deaf people have and will continue provide a benefit to society as a whole. And there have been many areas where it has done that already. So for example, there is a rise in popularity of baby signs and Makaton. And it's a way to reduce the friction of communication with babies and disabled people, and that is respectively. And yes, there are conversations about whether that is right or wrong. Should it be more focused on sign language? Again, that's a separate conversation. But if it wasn't for sign language, those concepts would never have been thought of in the first place, and now they're more popular. So that's a contribution from deaf people into the society as well. And one thing I've learned just from doing research about deaf gain is that, did you know the concept of huddle in the American football, when people all gather around and huddle together to discuss tactics or whatever, did you know that was first invented by a deaf football player called Paul D. Hubbard of Gallaudet University back in the 1890s? Wow. And obviously today, huddle still exists, and in many formats. It's not just in American football. You see it in other team sport as well, where people huddle together. And apparently it was started by that deaf person back in the 1890s. It's amazing. And even in another sport, you know the signals that baseball umpires do, and they have those signals that I don't understand because I don't watch baseball, but apparently again this was first being accredited by the first deaf baseball player called William Ellsworth Dummy Hoy, and he was accredited to have that concept in the first place. And now again, to this day, that's what baseball umpires do. And that's a contribution from a deaf person and the deaf community, hence deaf game, from a society perspective, not just from that individual. It benefits the society as a whole. And the idea is that it can benefit in many areas, in art, and science, and literature, and medical, all these things. And they have done that in the past, and it will continue to benefit society. And that is, again, what I'm trying to say is that deaf people want you to look at how deaf game can benefit them, and it can benefit you and a society. Even if you're not deaf yourself, it can still benefit you, as I've already said in examples from today, from the past, but also in the future as well. So I found all that very, very interesting when I read more about it, and I read about different people's experiences. And then I definitely want to talk about a little bit my own experiences just briefly. Although if you are a Patreon, you can learn more about it in a bit more detail. Again, link in the description if you want to be a Patreon member. But even from my own perspective, I definitely did not have that mindset of deaf game. Definitely not. And I think a big part of the reason is because I was brought up mainstream, and I tend to be the only person who's considered to be deaf. And I was never really part of a community as such of people who are like me. So it's difficult for me to look at it in a positive way when there are constant barriers in front of you and people don't understand you, and you can't really be part of something together. You're not really strength in numbers, you are on your own. And that's what I had growing up. Still, I want to look at it in a better way, and I gradually over time, especially since I started talking about it on YouTube, on my website, all these things, I am getting to be better at understanding the benefit of being deaf. There are benefits to it. And maybe I'll go in more detail about that, the individual benefit of what I get from being deaf. But again, I will mention it to my Patreon first, and then you can see from there what you think. But I do agree with certain things. So for example, I don't agree with the concept of hearing impaired, definitely not. And that was a label at me. I agree with that. I don't like it at all. And even the hearing loss terminology, I don't agree with that because it's not accurate for me. Because I've never lost anything. So why is it hearing loss? Because how can I lose something if I never had it in the first place? I have been like this all my life. So I haven't really lost anything. So that's another reason why I don't like the term hearing loss, albeit for a different reason. But maybe it's linked to deaf game as well. Maybe I want to look into that mindset. The one thing I have been a bit funny and not sure about is whether it causes segregation, because there's a big debate right now on whether concept like the small d, capital D deaf is causing separation, causing segregation in the deaf community. Should it not be a one unity instead of having lots of different communities? It's going to be a bigger barrier to fight separately, whereas if we're together, we'd be able to fight it in numbers, strength in numbers. There's topics about that, and I've mentioned that in another video about, the definition of deaf. What does that mean? If it's going to be something that's going to cause separation between communities, I don't really feel like that's a good thing, and I don't feel like it's going to be a positive thing in the long term. As well as that, everyone has their own experiences, whether they've been brought up, maybe they have been deaf later in life and they just don't feel like that way. Everyone has different experiences, and that's the thing about being deaf, is that it's an individual thing. You can't label everyone the same. So even if certain people don't really follow the concept of deaf game, we shouldn't really criticize them because we don't know what they have been going through. But at the same time, we can maybe support them and help each other. And that's why I'm challenging this argument about whether it's good to have different communities in deaf community. I'm not sure about that. Regardless, I think it's a positive thing to look at it in a way anyway, in terms of the benefit of what you have, because then you'll feel more better about yourself. You will feel less anxious and you'll feel more comfortable with who you are and your identity. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Why would we be challenged about that? Why is that a bad thing when people say, no, you should be thinking about deafness in a negative way? Well, no, why should I? You should look at it in a positive way, and I'm gradually getting better at that. I'm not perfect. I still have my moments of complaints, but gradually over time, I'm looking at the good thing about it. And one of the benefits is I feel a bit more free in terms of talking about it and accepting it as who I am, and I can just share my stuff with you. I think that's a good thing. It's such a big topic, and there are loads of videos and resources available. You can watch them or read them, and I'll put as many links as I can in the actual episode note on the webpage, and then you can check it out there. All the videos will be embedded there. I urge you to check it out, and I would also love to know what you think about the concept of death gain. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And if you can relate to it, how does it make you feel? How does that concept of death gain make you feel? And what do you want from other people and society in terms of death gain when they don't get it and they don't follow that concept, especially if they're hearing? I would love to know what you think. Link in the description, comment below, and don't forget also to subscribe and like whatever platform that you are on. Thank you for listening to me, and in the meantime, I will speak to you again soon. Take care.